So our first speaker is Ben. Ben is a health consultant, speaker, advisor, investor, and a board member of multiple corporations. Of course, it's Ben Greenfield. And he's a New York Times best-selling author of a wide variety of books and the host of a top-ranked fitness and health podcast, The Ben Greenfield Life Show. Ben Greenfield's mission to serve those who, like himself, desire life to the fullest, experience deep meaning, purpose, happiness, fulfillment of God's creation, and discover how to achieve full optimization of mind, body, spirit with boundless energy.
To make sure this is all accurate, did you tell on a golf game? You know, like bowl 300?
That's impressive. I knew you were a true Renaissance man.
This dude's impressive too. I checked into the hotel the other night and I'm like walking around as I do. I go up to scope out the gym. There's like one person in the gym and the deal's here getting his pump on.
How much was I squatting?
Hundreds, possibly thousands. I don't know. I think you were on a little like adductor leg curling pregnancy machine, but I don't even think I need a microphone. I'm labbed up. How's everybody doing? Good. Well, you made it happen. You're here. Congratulations. This is going to be a fun event. You know, Adil was telling me about the prospect of doing this a few months ago when I had him on the podcast, and it's just incredible to see it all come together. And, you know, I was thinking about what it is that I wanted to talk to you all about, and I got to thinking about this concept of principles, right? Because there's so many things you can do, stem lights, or stem cells, and red lights, and the coffee enemas, and the probiotic enemas, all the things and all the orifices. But, you know, there's this book, Principles, by Ray Dalio, in which he lays out key principles for business and for life. And I thought, well, gosh, there's got to be like some key principles that we could hone in on when it comes to aging and health and longevity. And so that's what I decided to piece together for you today. Don't worry. One of the key principles is not getting the poop shocked out of you by Garrett back there in Newbie. One key principle should be coffee, though. The strong coffee back there is fantastic. I hope you guys had a lot of it because we're going to feed through the fire hose for like the next 45 minutes. I've only got 6 principles. We'll take a deep dive into each one of them. I feel like we should get a little bit of energy flowing before we start. So I'm going to go ahead and stand up. Stand up. Oh boy, here we go. It's burpee time. You know, one of the first things I want to talk to you about is movement, so we might as well move a little bit to get things started. I'm going to show you one of my key kind of energy optimization routines that I do. I do this every morning. It's a good way to get nitric oxide going and charge up the body. Everybody just start to shake. We're going to find out who actually went to the bathroom this morning. Big breath in and shake it out. Let's do 5 of these. Big breath in. Take all that energy into your fingertips. Slam those heels into the ground. Big breath in. Good. 2 more. Big breath. And 1 more. Slowly slow down the shaking. Don't faint, please. We want to start this thing off the right way. Feel a little bit of tingling in the fingertips. Got some blood flowing. Everybody can sit down except the deal. You can do isometric squat the whole time. Since you're bragging on it. Well, you know, 6 key principles. I'm not going to unveil them all to you all at once, and spoiler alert, but if for some reason you feel like you got to take copious notes, don't worry about it. I made a resources page for you. It's at bengreenfieldlife.com/unlock24. bengreenfieldlife.com/unlock24. You can download the slides, you can catch up. If I don't get to everything, you can read ahead. But basically, movement. Movement is one of the first key principles. And you know, I don't know if a lot of you know this, but my formal background, my education is I have a master's degree in physiology and biomechanics from the University of Idaho. So when I look at somebody or I look at a program, I kind of tend to chunk it into a few different departments, so to speak, from a physiological full body standpoint. And so what you see on the slide here is when I look at movement, when I look at someone's weekly movement protocol, I like to see that all of the boxes are getting checked to hit specific physiological parameters. So one is strength. right? And one great doctor who's kind of making the rounds, Gabriel Lyon, she's fantastic. I just interviewed her on my show. She has this concept of muscle-centric medicine, and it's so true that muscle is a metabolic sink. It is the body's largest organ. She actually alerted me to the fact that it's not the skin, it's the muscle. And so the idea of maintaining muscle and strength into age is very important. As a matter of fact, certain things are correlated with age. Does anybody know some of the specific movement or fitness parameters that are associated with defying age, with aging more slowly? Do you have any ideas? Not how many triathlons you've done. Grip strength, yes, that's one. There's two others. Grip strength. Quad diameter, that's close, but no. Thunder thighs do not necessarily make you live longer. The other two are VO2 max, right, like maximum oxygen utilization, and then not your step count, but your actual walking speed. Even though step count is important, and I encourage people to get 8,000 to 10,000 plus a day, it's actually walking speed. I'll talk to you a little bit about this, but the idea is I like to think when I walk about walking just a little bit faster than what my brain wants me to walk at. And that's actually correlated with longevity, which is interesting. But grip strength is a biggie. So strength is the first. I really dig, especially when we're talking about not athleticism, but defying aging. I really dig the concept of super slow training. Anybody here do that? Or reviewed the book like Body by Science by Doug McGuff? This is me twice a week. This is my key strength training program because I like to be able to stay strong but minimize risk of injury and not have to have days laid up because I've been cranking out like clean and jerks and snatches in a Metcon, under load with a high risk of injury. So super slow training is basically one single set to failure. I use one of those ARX machines for this. You can use Nautilus gym equipment. You can use elastic bands. There's another guy named Dr. John Jaquish who has the X3 band system. You can use free weights. So basically the idea is you move very slowly through a few big multi-joint lifts. I personally do a chest and an overhead press. One single set to failure for each. And it's nice because you're done in like 20 to 25 minutes. So the first parameter is strength. For me, that's twice a week super slow training. Now interestingly, if you look at a lot of the studies on telomere length that have been done in rodent models and specifically very hard-working guinea pigs, they've actually found that the type of muscle that's most correlated to longevity is your fast twitch type 2 muscle fibers. And the interesting thing is that one of the ways the super slow training works is you're gradually exhausting both the fast twitch and the slow twitch muscle fibers, but you're not really moving quickly, are you? Right? You're not moving explosively. It turns out that moving quickly and explosively is also correlated with longevity. So if you were going to do super slow training, let's say twice a week, you would also want to do some form of explosive calisthenics, or in my own training routine, I like to use kettlebells for this. But basically, twice a week super slow training, and then twice a week some form of powerful, more fast twitch training allows you to target both of the muscle groups that are correlated with longevity, because you're getting a lot of the grip strength and the strength, the brute strength with the super slow training, and then for the power, you're moving with body weight or explosive style training. So we've got strength and power. The next key component of living a long time based on fitness is your ability to be able to buffer lactic acid. As a matter of fact, there's a great Russian strength coach and kettlebell instructor named Pavel Zatzelin. Anybody heard of Pavel? I've gone down and done some of their kettlebell certification courses, and he has a great book called The Quick and the Dead. And it's about this concept that excess lactic acid and metabolic acidosis is actually something that flies in the face of longevity. So your ability to be able to buffer lactic acid is important. You can actually train your body to do this. Some of you might be familiar with the classic Tabata protocol. Anybody here ever done a Tabata protocol? I mean, they even make bikes now, like the Aerodyne bike and the Aerosol bike, that literally have Tabata protocols programmed into them. It is, who knows the Tabata protocol? You raise your hands. All right, quiz. What is it?
I'm no expert, but it's a series of exercises.
It's a series of exercises. It's basically 20 seconds of work and 10 seconds of recovery done 8 times through. So you're just like jamming on the bike, 20 seconds as hard as you can go, then 10 seconds of easy pedaling. But the magic of lactic acid training comes in this. A lot of this stuff is based on work to rest ratios. So to buffer lactic acid, or to build your lactic acid buffering capacity, you need to be working longer than you're resting. So if you're doing a set at the gym, what you're looking for is about a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. That allows your body to build up massive amounts of lactic acid, not be able to get rid of it that quickly, and then build it up again. And the response to that is an increase in the lactic acid buffering enzymes that allow you to be in a state of metabolic acidosis during the workout, but then be able to be in a lower state of lactic acidosis because you've upregulated those enzymes later on. A lot of this stuff is very interesting. Like, has anybody ever freaked out when you get out of sauna, or maybe out of the cold tub, and if you test your blood glucose or wear a monitor like this, and if your blood glucose levels are elevated? This often happens after an exercise session too, and you're like, what the heck? This stuff is supposed to stabilize my blood glucose. Well, the idea is that a short-term transient rise in glucose from the stress that you experience in a sauna or in a cold plunge or during exercise results in long-term blood glucose stabilization because it upregulates a lot of those transporters that help to shove it into muscle. But short term, you're basically doing exactly the opposite of what you would want. So you don't want a bunch of lactic acid in your system, but doing short, frequent bursts of this throughout the week allow you to have less lactic acid the rest of the time. Just like doing sauna or cold or exercise will spike your blood glucose because it makes your liver release a bunch of its glycogen. But long term, it results in a stabilization of blood glucose. Okay, so you want to do something each week, and I like the classic Tabata set for this because it only lasts 4 minutes. I do it twice a week because it increases your lactic acid buffering capacity. So the next one you see there is for the mitochondria. I don't think it's any secret that mitochondrial density is very important, right? Mitochondrial biogenesis, the health of the mitochondria, your ability to create ATP, your ability to be able to use calories to shuttle electrons through the electron transport chain and make the body's energy currency. That's important, and mitochondrial health is very important. Another guest speaker here, Dave Asprey, he's written an entire book about the importance of mitochondria, and there's good reason for that because it's so important for health and for longevity. But it's different than lactic acid. As a matter of fact, the studies that have been done, if you look at exercise physiology, at the mitochondria, it's a different work-to-rest ratio. So for the mitochondria, what you're looking at is more like a 1-to-4 work-to-rest ratio instead of the 2-to-1 that you'd see with lactate buffering. Now, what studies seem to indicate is you only need to do this once a week. Okay, a lot of people overdo it. They're into triathlon and crossfitting, and they're gym junkies and exercise enthusiasts, and they do this every single day. But I do this once a week. All I do are 4 30-second all-out efforts with a 1-to-4 work-to-rest ratio. Who's good at math and knows how long I'm resting based on that? 30 seconds on, 1-to-4 work-to-rest ratio. 2 minutes of recovery, 2 minutes of recovery. So it's basically long, luxurious rest periods if you're wanting to work your mitochondria with brief, like 20 to 30 second all-out bouts. And again, this is like once a week. So as you're sitting there kind of mapping out your week, you can say, okay, so a couple times a week I'm doing super slow, and that's like 20, 25 minutes. A couple times a week I'm doing something powerful, like kettlebells or body weight. 1 or 2 times a week I'm doing some kind of a Tabata set to build up my lactic acid buffering capacity. And then once a week I'm doing something where I'm doing just about 4, maybe a couple of more if you want to, if you're a glutton for punishment, 30-second efforts with a 1-to-4 work-to-rest ratio. Is this making sense so far? This is too much? You guys are basically in exercise physiology 101 right now. But I can tell you're getting this. I can tell you're getting this. Okay, then we get to maximum oxygen utilization. I think Dr. Peter Attia has done a good job championing this idea that this isn't just for the elite athlete, that as you age, you want to be able to maintain VO2 max. VO2 max is basically the combination of how much oxygen you can breathe in, how good a job your body does transporting that oxygen throughout your body, and then how good a job that your tissues do extracting that oxygen as it rushes past in the bloodstream, for example, to the muscles. And there are proven ways that science has looked into to actually increase your VO2 max. Now, I'm so into VO2 max that I've got my 15-year-old sons doing this along with me once per week. Again, this stuff is pretty brief, once per week. This is probably the hardest, longest session that I give to my clients or that I do with myself. So VO2 max is very, very simple. Basically, you're looking at a 1-to-1 work-to-rest ratio, but unlike these short lactic acid sets or these short mitochondrial sets, VO2 max is a little bit longer. So the key VO2 max workout, based on studies, is a 4-minute effort at maximum sustainable pace. And I do this once a week. Just get on a bike. I actually have a playlist where I've got 4 hard songs and 4 easy songs. And they're all like 4 to 5 minutes long. So I can just follow the songs and I don't have to look at the clock or anything else. And all you do is you go hard for 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes max, and then you recover and go easy for 4 to 6 minutes, and you do that 4 to 6 times through. And that's just like the magical way to keep your VO2 max elevated for life. You can do it on a bike, you can do it on a rowing machine, you can do it on a treadmill, it doesn't matter. Anybody here ever done a session like this? It takes a lot of focus, it's kind of tiring, but it works. Like your oxygen capacity can stay very elevated. I have a great VO2 max for my age, and I think a big part of it is because once a week, I just kind of bite the bullet, I put in my tunes, and I go through this one session, and it works fantastically. So VO2 max, and then finally, many of you are probably familiar with this increasing popularity of something that's been a thing in endurance sports for a long time. Like, I raced Ironman triathlon for 20 years and did Spartan racing, and I raced bicycles for University of Idaho and did open water swimming. We were always about zone 2 training. Anybody know what zone 2 training is, what that means? Yeah, it's like your fat burning. It's an aerobic, conversational rate of exercise. And again, a lot of people overdo this, right? The frowny-faced people who are, on the treadmill at the gym for long periods of time, or riding their bike or hobbling around town with their knee taped up and their elbow taped up and their back brace on, doing zone 2 cardio all the time. You don't need a lot of it. I give myself one time per week that I can go out for a long, fasted hike, or a long bike ride to a coffee shop, or a jog, or a long swim. And if you're engaged in what's called NEAT, what's NEAT? Anybody know? Non-exercise, we're almost there. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically the idea is if you're engaged in this low-level physical activity throughout the day, maybe a treadmill at your workstation, cleaning the garage, walking around your house, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. You don't need to do a lot of this zone 2 cardio. But once a week, something that kind of pushes you aerobically for a long period of time. I like to do it fasted to upregulate my fat burning capacity. This is kind of like the 6th component of movement. And if you were to hit each of those parameters throughout the entire week, you would be hitting every single physiological system that's necessary to maintain fitness for life and to really have an anti-aging protocol for physical fitness that you can do throughout your entire life. That isn't going to beat you up as much as CrossFit. And you can still throw in sports, pickleball, tennis, golf, etc. And that's great. But this is the key kind of crux of the program. Now, I mentioned walking, and a few times throughout my presentation today, I'll give you a few pro tips. So I love to walk. I've become a huge fan of walking, especially as I age. It's great to shovel a brain-derived neurotrophic factor and what's called VEGF, and it's like miracle grow for the brain and your head. It's a great way to get exercise, do nature immersion, meditate. A few key tips that I do when I walk. I talked to you about the walking pace and how the walking pace is important. But a few other things, hand weights, weighted vests, some form of resistance, that's fine if you're going out for these long walks to get your 8,000 to 10,000 step count. Resisted breath devices. Anybody ever mess around with these devices that can increase your diaphragmatic strength and your inspiratory and expiratory muscle strength when you're walking? They're very cool. There's a lot of them out there, and I'll put a whole bunch on the slides and resources page for this presentation, but there's one called a Relaxator. It was invented by this guy named Anders Olsen, who's got a few good books and resources on breath, but it's this little kind of whistle-like device. I keep one in my fanny pack, and all it does is it forces you to breathe in through your nose and then gives you slight resistance breathing out through your mouth while you're out on a walk. I'll wear this thing sometimes on 30, 45-minute walks, do a few breaths in between phone calls, but it's fantastic. You almost feel, if you were to just go on a really long walk, like your long zone 2 session during the week, as though you've been meditating during the entire walk. But this idea of resisted breath training during a walk works very well. Using something that increases the proprioceptive stimuli in the feet. One example that I have up there is Naboso. Anybody in here ever messed around with like the Naboso socks or the Naboso insoles? They're a company, there's a few of them, but they have these
little tiny, almost like acupressure points within the socks or within the insoles that stimulate the proprioceptive nerves in your feet and allow you to just have a better feel for the ground. They improve posture, and they allow for you to just be able to stimulate the nerves in your feet a lot better when you're walking. These are all little ways that you can kind of upgrade a walk. And then finally, there's the counterpace device. And if you were to go to a hospital and be engaged in some type of cardiac rehab, say post-stroke or post-heart attack, they would have you do something called, it's called enhanced external counterpulsation. It's basically these big boots and a bodysuit that you put on that contracts every time that your heart reaches its diastolic phase. And you can actually get this tiny little cheapo device instead of this $60,000 enhanced external counterpulsation device. The only person I know in the biohacking industry who actually owns one of these is, of course, Dr. Joe Mercola. He's got all the toys. But this counterpace device, this little chest strap that you wear while you walk, it'll cue sounds via an app in your phone and time each step that you take to the beats of your heart, right? So if your heart is beating 90 beats per minute, you'll be walking at a cadence of 90. If your heart's beating 100, you'll walk at a cadence of 100. And it gradually trains you to walk at a pace that correlates to your heart rate. And it turns out that this is fantastic for cardiovascular function. And so this is a little known device. I used it for about a year and then kind of got to the point, you know, kind of like when you wear a blood glucose monitor, after a while you kind of know which foods are causing issues, or after you've logged your food for a while, you know how many calories a banana or a piece of steak has. Well, this counterpace device is really great because it allows you to gradually just kind of know how well you're doing with correlating your pace to your heart rate. It's a cool little hack. I've got one, I still pull it out occasionally and make sure I'm kind of on pace. But these are just a few kind of pro tips for upgrading your walk if you decide that you're going to make, as I encourage you to do, walking a major part of your daily routine. Okay, so another pro tip, and this is something, I think the term young muscle is a term that a nutritionist named Joel Green used when I interviewed him, but it's this idea that as you age, you get all sorts of adhesions and cross-linking of muscle fibers and scar tissue that can build up. But you can combat a lot of this with another component of fitness that I didn't talk about in my other slide. That's basically mobility. And I do this, all my clients do this, but we allot 10 to 15 minutes every morning, right, while the coffee or the tea is on, or while we're listening to some kind of a uplifting morning audio or some music and just getting ready for the day. 10 to 15 minutes of hunting down all the tight spots in the body, you know, and kind of getting supple, as Kelly Starrett talks about in his great book, Becoming a Supple Leopard. I actually keep that book in the room where I have all my little foam rollers and lacrosse balls. Anything that's tight, you know, I'll kind of open up to the page of his book and just hit it, wiggle into some spots and scrape and roll and vibrate. But this idea of carving out about 10 to 15 minutes of mobility each day has been a game changer for me. I mean, I've got fewer aches and pains and feel better now at 42 years old than I did at 18. And I attribute a great deal of that, not to the fact that I'm spending thousands of dollars a month on massage therapy, because I don't have the time or the resources to just be at a massage therapist all the time, but this idea of just like basically, you know, making love to a foam roller a little bit in the morning and squeezing into some vibrating balls and using scraping tools. I mean, I've even gone so far as to do this for the abdominals, right? Scraping, cupping, working on some of the pelvic floor musculature in the abdominals, which is fantastic as you age. If you've ever been through like SIBO or had bouts of constipation or had like incontinence or prolapse or anything like that, a lot of times a lot of this is concentrated in the abdominals and the pelvic musculature, and so that counts also as an area that you can increase mobility in. But I figure if I'm doing 10 to 15 minutes of mobility every morning, by the end of every week, I've amassed like 75 to 90 minutes of deep tissue work. And it's great because I'm maintaining so-called young muscle. So I've got a lot of little tips and resources on the slides for this presentation that I'm giving to you at the URL. But basically, these are just some little things that I'll use. Percussion guns, scraping tools, compression boots, inversion like hanging upside down. You see movement stacks on there. I'll stop during the day and use different movement stacks like Stu McGill's Big 3 for the low back, or Eldoa. Anybody here ever do Eldoa? It's kind of like a self-inflicted form of like deep tissue stretching where you're moving for long periods, like 60 seconds into certain poses. And then there's another guy named Dr. Eric Goodman. He's got a great book called True to Form, where he teaches you how to do your own self-inflicted traction for the low back. And I mean, if you've got disc compression or low back issues, it's fantastic kind of having these little exercises in your back pocket. So I like to think of this as almost like a menu that I rely upon each day. So when I'm stopping each hour to do a little bit of movement, I've got these little snacks that I pull out, and 3 of the big ones that I use are Eldoa stretches, Stu McGill's Big 3 for the low back, and then Dr. Eric Goodman's foundation training exercises. So hopefully this gets you thinking a little bit about what you can do throughout the day, or what you can start your morning off with to maintain this so-called young muscle. Okay, principle number 2 is fuel. And I can already tell that I've got 45 minutes to talk to you guys. There's no way I'm gonna get through everything, but nonetheless, I'm gonna tell you as much as I can while I'm up here. So fuel obviously is important. Everybody loves to eat. No matter what diet that you look at, right? From an epidemiological standpoint, if you look at the blue zones and areas where people are living a disproportionately long period of time, what's the most common diet that people eat? It's a trick question. I heard some people say Mediterranean diet. It is true. Like if you're sitting next to me on an airplane, I know nothing about you, and you say, well, what's the healthiest diet? Usually I'll say, well, it's some semblance of a Mediterranean diet. Just maybe that's human origin in the Fertile Crescent. Maybe it's the wide variety of plants and herbs and spices. Maybe it's the unlimited breadsticks and giant Caesar salad bowls. I don't know. But the Mediterranean diet seems to work well for a large portion of people, yet when you look at paleo carnivore, low fat, high carb, high fat, low carb, there's no real one diet that we tend to see working for all of humankind, but there are dietary characteristics, principles that pop up over and over again in the diets of the healthiest, longest living people on the face of the planet. They're physically active. That makes sense. They eat with people in a parasympathetic state. This is important in westernized cultures. A lot of times we're sucking our superfood smoothie down when we're driving 60 miles an hour down the highway on our way to work. But when you look at a lot of these blue zones or areas where people are living for a long time, or even at people who don't have a lot of gut distress, they're having a gratitude practice, prayer before a meal, eating with people, prioritizing family dinners, chewing each bite of food until it's well masticated, being in a parasympathetic state. This idea of consuming food mindfully, I think, is very underrated and very important. As a matter of fact, I think I just see Lauren in the audience. Lauren, yeah, Lauren Lapp. She's got a great book. I just interviewed her on my podcast, and she talks a lot about this concept, about how stress is one of the major contributors to gut distress, and it's true. I wish more people were talking about this because of its importance. We see some semblance of religious fasting or some type of systematic cleansing, right? Whether it's intermittent fasting or, certain periods of observation of Lent, for example, or protein restriction, or even just based on hunting and farming cycles in areas where people don't have 24/7 access to hyper-palatable foods, just basically not having access to certain foods or oils or proteins at certain points during the year, right? So we see fasting as another characteristic of a good fueling rule. We see typically, unless you're talking to a lot of these carnivore folks, a wide variety of plants and herbs and spices. And I think this is important. It's one of the things that concerns me a little bit about an all-meat diet, unless it's being used as some form of autoimmune therapy, or in someone who has a severe issue with eating plants. Just in the past couple of months, I saw 2 different studies showing decreased all-cause risk of mortality with 40 grams of fiber per day, and that was with a dose response, meaning they started at 10, and there was continued decreased all-cause risk of mortality with each 10-gram addition of fiber up to 40 grams, and it's tough to get that from something like an all-meat diet. And then another study showed the same thing with polyphenols. Do you get a lot of polyphenols from a ribeye? Not necessarily. It tastes really good. I love ribeyes. But polyphenols, like the dark reds and blues and blacks, the black walnuts and pomegranates and blueberries and red wines and all these wonderful like skin and seed and dark rich fruits of the plant kingdom and vegetables of the plant kingdom. So high polyphenol and high fiber intake is something that correlates to a high intake of a wide variety of plants and herbs and spices. And sure, if your gut gets distressed from those, you might have to go through a short-term healing period if you have leaky gut or an autoimmune response to plants. But ultimately, long-term, you should be trying to achieve a broad intake of a lot of these plant defense mechanisms, right? Hormetic stressors, all the stuff that we're supposed to avoid, but in fact, the same as cold and sauna and exercise and alcohol and sunlight and a lot of these other things do, even oxygen, right? These are mild hormetic stressors that induce cellular resilience when you're sprinkling them in throughout the week and not overdoing them, right? I didn't say eat a loaf of bread every day, right? It's instead eat a wide variety of plants and herbs and spices. And then we even see small doses of alcohol consumed. I'm often asked this, one of the most popular questions I'm asked is, should you drink alcohol? Basically, my opinion from looking at the data is that a small amount of alcohol on a regular basis and rarely ever exceeding a high dose of alcohol enough to spill a lot of acetaldehyde and ethanol and toxins into the body actually can have a cellular resilience promoting effect. As a matter of fact, one of my friends, Dr. Chris Masterjohn, he just wrote a fantastic article on his Substack about 2 or 3 months ago about the longevity enhancing benefits of small amounts of alcohol, and I suspect that's because it is a mild hormetic stressor. I'm not talking about the high fructose corn syrup Slurpees from Las Vegas bar. I'm talking about little bits of like bitters or gin or tequila or vodka, like a clean alcohol or an organic biodynamic wine that you enjoy a few times throughout the week, right? So alcohol would, I think, fall into the same category as microdosing with a wide variety of plants and herbs and spices. So these are a few common characteristics that we see amongst many successful dieters, but then there are 2 key factors that I think are the most important to hone in on. And that's glycemic variability, which is what? Glycemic variability. Come on, you guys are smart. I know somebody's got this. How often your blood sugar goes up and down or is variable throughout the day. And then the other is, of course, inflammation. So glycemic variability, a few ways to keep your finger on the pulse of this. I'm wearing a CGM right now. Anybody else in here experimented with or used a CGM? They're way more convenient than the cheapo blood glucose monitors you can get from Walgreens or CVS, which also work, by the way. But what gets measured gets managed, and even though I don't wear a CGM year-round, it lasts for a couple of weeks, most of these sensors, and I'll slap it on once every couple of months to keep track of how my lifestyle and my diet and my exercise factors are affecting my blood glucose, how long my glucose stays elevated after I have a meal, how much a meal elevates it acutely, what kind of things lower it. And I've found that certain lifestyle factors tend to really do a good job controlling glycemic variability. I have one of them, the most powerful, listed up there. What do you guys think is the #1 way to keep blood glucose stabilized throughout the entire day? Even though a lot of stuff works, walking works, and low-level physical activity works, and lifting weights, and having muscle as a metabolic sink works, what's the #1 way? That's why I'm wearing a t-shirt in this kind of cold room. Cold, right? Some type of cold. As a matter of fact, I've done cold plunges in the morning that keep my blood glucose levels in the 70 to 80 range the rest of the day, and compared that to days in which I'm not doing cold, and there's a distinct difference. So I think cold is underrated as a way to control blood glucose. GDAs, anybody know what a GDA is? It's a glucose disposal agent. These are type of things that you can eat or consume that would increase the ability of the muscles to express what are called GLUT4 transporters and pull more glucose into muscle tissue and out of the bloodstream, which is where you don't want it if you're trying to control glycemic variability. So we're talking about things like berberine, bitter melon extract. Anybody here ever used the apple cider vinegar trick? Ceylon cinnamon. Even if I'm at a bar or a steakhouse or a restaurant, I'll order a little bit of bitters from the bar over soda water with a splash of lemon, because even bitters and lemon and compounds that you can easily find at a restaurant can be used to control blood glucose, and it's way easier than going in the bathroom and trying to take a cold shower in the restaurant sink, right? So blood glucose disposal agents also important. And then I talked about eating in a parasympathetic state and chewing your food mindfully, and that's not only important because it can assist with reducing the incidence of leaky gut and poor digestion and poor intake of nutrients, but it can also help you to control blood glucose. So glycemic variability is one thing to think about. The other key factor to think about is inflammation, and you are no doubt familiar with this idea that is very popular in the health sector right now to mitigate the amount of seed oils, or at least processed and heated seed oils that you consume, and that's for good reason, because of the buildup of what's called 4-HNE, hydroxynonenal, which is a compound that can increase oxidative stress, not in a way that would be like a hormetic stress, or it's not like you eat little bits of seed oil here and there to make yourself stronger. It's actually something that sticks around in the body for a long time and affects your cell membranes in such a manner that the more you can reduce it, the better. Right? I don't yet have one of those little cards that I carry into a restaurant that tells them I'm allergic to seed oils, and occasionally I go out to a nice restaurant with my wife and I know the steak's got vegetable oil in it, and I don't ask, and I just have it. Because, I follow about, I would say, like a 90-10 rule with my own diet. But being aware of seed oils is probably the most important thing that you can do for inflammation. And I have some other tips up here. Spirulina and glycine at about 5 grams are something that can help to sop up inflammation, particularly if you've just gone, ate nuts at the Whole Foods salad bar and filled yourself up with canola oil. You've gone to a restaurant, or maybe you've eaten a corn dog, I don't know. But basically, spirulina and glycine are very good. Another newer, very potent antioxidant that I've been using quite a bit recently is C60. Anybody here ever use C60? I would place C60 also into the category of a very, very powerful anti-inflammatory. I'd rank it up there with some other things that are like 100 times more powerful than resveratrol, which would be like pterostilbene. That's another very potent antioxidant. It's a good one to have around. PQQ, that's also a very good one. But then C60 is a fantastic antioxidant, especially if you're trying to control inflammation. There's some great C60 companies out there now. High intake of omega-3 fatty acids, wide intake of a wide variety of herbs and spices. Another interesting antioxidant that I think flies under the radar a little bit is not necessarily vitamin C, but the tocotrienols that you find from vitamin E. Has anybody here looked at the research of Dr. Barry Tan? He's done a lot of work with Designs for Health, and he has his own company. I forget the name of it, but he's isolated these very potent tocotrienols from the annatto plant. And it turns out that not only for muscle and bone density and for the antioxidant effect of this combination of vitamin E and similarly MK4 from vitamin K is very important, but these tocotrienols isolated from annatto seem to have some very unique and beneficial antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. I personally use MK4 as well as tocotrienols from vitamin E for this reason. So that's another one to think about if you're looking for some supplements that kind of fly under the radar. Melatonin, CBD, NAD, I'm a big fan of those. NAD for sleep deprivation and for general wellness. And then melatonin and CBD not only for sleep, but because they can help with inflammation as you sleep. And then finally, one other thing that flies under the radar is your copper-iron ratios. Anybody in here familiar with the root cause protocol by Morley Robbins? He makes a pretty good case that a lot of times low intake of copper, low bioavailability of copper is something also that can contribute to inflammation. So that's another thing to think about is your mineral balance and specifically your copper intake when it comes to inflammation. So those are a few things to think about when it comes to inflammation. I've got a sample day of what my own eating protocol looks like. If you download the slides, you can review that if you too want to have a raw liver smoothie in the morning. Okay, so the third principle is environment. Awareness of electricity, air, light, and water as environmental variables. This is one that's really important. I mean, even right now, right, we're under modern LED fluorescent, flicker full lighting, we're bombarded by Wi-Fi signals, we have no clue what they cleaned this carpet with last night, but I guarantee it probably has a few VOCs in it, and fortunately we do have access to really good water, thank you Aphora, they even switched to glass cups, so yeah, we've got good water, but these are the things that can kind of, Men's Health Magazine and Women's Health Magazine, they talk all about eating lean protein and how to make your own oatmeal with powdered peanut butter in it, and how to do the 16th exercise, routine of the month. But they don't talk a lot about these environmental variables of air, light, water, and electricity. And I personally have really outfitted my home and my office to hone in on this stuff using a few of these tactics that I'll share with you. So as far as electricity is concerned, I don't think I need to tell many of you in this room about the concept of your body being a battery, right? Like each cell operating with a very precise electrochemical gradient across the cell, slight negative charge on the inside, positive charge on the outside. And exposure to large amounts of non-native EMF can cause an influx of calcium into the cell, can cause improper depolarization. If you want to read more about this, check out a book by Jerry Tennant called Healing is Voltage. There's another one by Robert Becker called The Body Electric. But treating the body as a battery, as an electrical machine, is really important. And that would include making sure that you're doing things that restore proper depolarization to the cell membrane, while avoiding the things that will cause your body's battery to become drained. So a few of the key things I'm into, earthing and grounding mats, right? Like I sleep with a grounding mat on my bed. I've got grounding mats plugged into a dirty electricity filter, which is important if you want to limit your exposure to AC power surges in my office and in key areas of my house. Grounded pillows and sheets. I literally, like all my pillows are grounded pillowcases. My wife gets annoyed when we make love at night and she has to get untangled from all the pillowcases because every single one has a cable coming out of it. And, yeah, TMI, but it can turn into an issue. You may want to have some spare pillows, you know what I'm saying? Shoes and sandals or walking outside barefoot, right? Like, I ground every single day. And you don't have to be a dirty hippie walking around barefoot in the city. Yes, I saw a lot of condoms and needles even when I was walking around literally the perimeter of the hotel this morning in Austin. I'll wear shoes, and even if I don't have grounding shoes, I was wearing these Beluga monkey shoes this morning, I will drop and do some push-ups here and there, or lay down on my back in the grass for a couple minutes when I walk past a nice grassy area and go back to my hotel room and shower off all the herbicides and pesticides and just laid in. But ultimately, trying to get in contact with the surface of the planet is very important, and that's one of the better ways to ground in earth, but it's not the best way. You guys know the best way to soak up as many negative ions as you can and build up on the surface of our planet when lightning strikes it or when solar photons bombard the planet? Number one way, to earth or ground, like 20x, because I've measured this at my home. Water. Immersing yourself in a natural body of water, or even a pool or bathtub or cold tub that is connected to the ground in some way, either through metal pipes or a conduit or a stand. Like if you have your cold tub ground, you can literally take a wire out of your cold tub, not a toaster, a wire out of your cold tub and plug it into the ground. You can actually ground a cold tub or ground a pool, and you can actually really enhance the grounding effect by being in a natural body of water. That's why living up in inland Washington State, one of the things I don't like is I can't walk on the beach and jump into salt water, because if I could, I would be in that every day for the amplified grounding and earthing effect. And then PEMF. Anybody here ever use PEMF technologies, pulsed electromagnetic field? This is like grounding on steroids. You're concentrating that signal, amplifying that signal, and I sleep on top of a PEMF mat that's on top of the grounding sheets and the grounding pillow. I got a PEMF mat and a Zen den in my basement, but pulsed electromagnetic field technology is fantastic to restore the body's proper electrical function. It opens and closes cell membranes. It's some of the best electrical medicine out there. I've listed a few different brands that I've vetted and that I like and use. I'm actually headed down to Cabo tomorrow to do some work with the deal, and I even had some PEMF units sent to the house that I'm staying at so that I can get the most out of the stem cell therapies and stuff that we're doing, because it's such a potent anti-inflammatory. I had some of the cellar eggs sent down there, which is kind of like a combination of spot treatment and a mat. But PEMF is really good. And then as far as EMF protection goes, obviously, we could talk about this for a while, but working with the building biologist, doing an audit of your home, finding out areas that have a high amount of dirty electricity or a high amount of EMF and mitigating that is important. What's the number one area of the house to focus on? Right, the bedroom. Yeah, that's the arguable 1/3 of your life where the majority of your nervous system repair and recovery is going to take place during a night of sleep. And we're not all going to turn into Luddites and get rid of our Wi-Fi and throw out our phones and unplug everything in the house. But if you can do a lot of that in the bedroom, I mean, I've gone so far as I have a kill switch in my bedroom. On our princess poster bed, I've got a remote control Faraday cage that when I get into bed, closes down around the bed. I can't take a phone call. I can't send a text message. The bedroom is a quiet, cave-like chamber. No TVs, no laptops, no Wi-Fi, nothing. So if you can focus on one area of your house to allow your nervous system to repair and recover, the bedroom is the key place to hone in on. And I've got a few other tips that I've thrown in here as far as clothing that you can wear to block EMF, laptop pads, some of the devices that are sprinkled around my house. But these are a few things to think about when it comes to your body being a battery. Now I've got about 5 minutes left here. I'm not going to get through all my slides, but I want to show you a few of the key things. Lighting is important, so make sure that you review the slide when it comes to the things you want to think about when it comes to light and home lighting. And again, you guys have access to all these slides. I see some of you taking pictures of it with your phone, but don't worry, you can just download these. I've got them all available. The air is important in terms of your body air. Oxygenation is important. I talked a little bit about water filtration. Ophora has some great information about the idea of not just filtering using double carbon block or reverse osmosis, but also thinking about oxygenating and structuring the water, and even the vessels that you drink out of. This is another hidden variable that's super important that I'm very adamant about. And then detoxification, this would be the fourth principle, right? I have one day of the week that I set aside. Don't laugh, I do the coffee enema, I do the binder like the charcoal, I use the glutathione and the other things to upregulate the liver's antioxidant pathways, I jump up and down on a trampoline. I'm a big fan of doing daily movement and then some type of weekly detoxification protocol, so you don't reach January 1st and have to do your 30-day fancy $3,000 juice plans, right? This idea of giving your body a chance to detox and calendaring it and scheduling it every week. For me, it's Wednesday morning. I just basically have an extra 45 minutes carved out every Wednesday morning to just flush out my body and do all the things that help out with that. And then I finish up with an infrared sauna to sweat everything out, drink some good minerals, move on, have my smoothie, and get going with the rest of the day. But weekly detoxification is something that I think is underrated in the same way that daily mobility and deep tissue work is something that's underrated. Okay, recovery. I've got all sorts of different recovery tools in my bedroom that I share with you on the slides. I've got this whole Zen Den set up, but this idea of having, with my clients, basically, when I program out their week for them, they all have what's called a parasympathetic menu for each day, where they can choose from sauna and breath work and cold plunge and movement and meditation and yoga and all these restorative principles that I think are very important to work in throughout the week. Now, the reason that I sailed through a few of those slides is that I think one of the things that's the most important, and I do have some pro tips for cold. I really want you guys to review the slides as you go through the URL that I'll share with you. The last one is the spirit. Now, I'll finish with this. I was very honed into business and health all the way up until 9 years ago. I was traveling all over the planet. I was speaking on stages. I was racing. But my marriage was falling apart, my connection to my sons, my presence as a father and a husband was really beginning to fall through the cracks, and I was losing my happiness, and a big part of that is I wasn't training my spirit with the spiritual disciplines in the same way that I was training my body with physical disciplines, or the same way that I was working on my business with key business principles and disciplines. And I turned all that around. I'm happier than ever. My wife and I are more connected than ever. My relationship with my kids is better than ever. And a big reason for that is I really began to focus on the spiritual disciplines, many of which I have listed there for you. There are great resources like Donald Whitney and Adil Kalpin, and I'll put some of my favorite books on the resources page for this presentation. But I got my priorities in order. This is the last slide, by the way. My priorities now in life are as follows. Number one is God. I wake up in the morning and it starts with prayer, meditation, gratitude, time in scripture, basically strapping on my spiritual armor first. The next is my spouse. My wife and I pray together every night. We have weekly marriage meetings where we go over gratitude for each other, upcoming chores in the household, challenges and blockers that we're experiencing, and go over the family calendar. And then we carve out 4 times a year where we'll just go off on our own for 2 to 3 days to plan out life and family. Number 3 is kids. We all meet for a wonderful morning huddle every morning where I connect with my children deeply. I take them through a book every day. We spend 2 hours every single night playing dinner games, singing songs, hanging out in their bedroom, reading stories, and this all comes before health and before business. And I operated for a very long time with the idea that if I take care of my body so that I'm nice and healthy as I age, and if I'm a good provider for the family and I build up wealth for the family, that there will come a time when I'm able to be that fully present father and husband that I want to be. And I was dead wrong. And I've seen, and this is the reason I'm talking with you about it right now, right here, that in our world, right, pursuing health, pursuing anti-aging, biohacking, longevity, it can turn into a very selfish pursuit that often tends to isolate us from our friends who might not be into biohacking, even though human connectivity and social life is so much more important than any of this. And it can isolate us from our family because we're off doing all these things, and our spouse and our kids become almost like folks who are like ships passing in the night as we interact with them. And so think about these priorities, right? If you have a spouse, the spouse comes after your spiritual life, and then come your children, and then comes your health, and then comes your business. And this is a key factor in my happiness now, because even though I've got less time to work on my business, I'm building more slowly than I want to, I'm happier than ever. So as you think about all these other things that I shared with you, just remember what's most important. Your relationship with a higher power, your relationship with your friends, with your family, with your community, your health, and then your business. And so these priorities have really transformed my own happiness, and I couldn't help but share them with you today. And I realize I gave you guys a lot of stuff and barely even scratched the surface of half the stuff, but the slides are at bengreenfieldlife.com/unlock24. I'm going to be here all day. I love to talk. I love to answer questions. I know I can come across as this highfalutin, arrogant, hooty-tooty dude who's unapproachable, but I'm not. I just look that way. So feel free to come up to me and talk to me about anything. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really love that because I know I do. If you weren't awake before, you certainly are now. Ben, you are like a triple shot of espresso. I have never seen somebody rock sweatpants like that with those thunderbolts. That is true swag right now. Thank you so much, Ben. Before we take a quick break, I do want to share that at the end of the event, we will be announcing the grand prize winner of a $7,248 giveaway graciously provided by Neurohacker. If you're here, your name has already been entered into the draw. We will be pulling out that name live in just a few hours. Now here's what you will get: a 1-year supply of several of the best-selling Qualia products, including their brand new formula, Qualia NAD+. Now we do have some of our sponsors here today, like NanoV, Afora Water, NewFit, and Strong Coffee, so be sure to check them out. We also have our Eterna booth set up, where you will find some of the best Dr. Khan approved Japanese skincare. The line is called PLGNS. Here's how it works. Let's play the video.
There are a million cosmetic products out there. The problem is, do you actually know if they work? The Japanese have the special technology called PLGANS that allows the active ingredients from the growth factors that are derived from stem cells to actually penetrate the skin for up to 24 hours with one application. This can be used by essentially anyone looking to brighten their skin, to reduce the signs of skin aging, and to even re-stimulate hair follicle growth. They have some cool products that I'm personally using, and I believe that when it comes to skincare, they have the highest standards in the world. These products are now finally available at our website, eterna.health.